All right, Padres fans. So there was an article that was put out yesterday by Kevin Acee in the San Diego Union Tribune following the AJ Preller press conference, and it was a lot about Mike Shildt and some pushback on how he went about things with coaches and how he wanted to please everybody and he couldn't. And there was a lot of stress in this, obviously, and he was worn out, and that's already been discussed a lot around San Diego here since this announcement this week. But there was just a lot of interesting stuff in this article, so I wanted to go through it. It's in the San Diego Union Tribune right now, so if you want to check it out, it is titled "Mike Shildt Left Padres, Made a Decision to Go Home in Part Due to Inability to Please Everyone." And Kevin starts it off by saying, Mike Shildt was worn out and made the decision to leave his job as Padres manager in order to focus on his mental and physical well-being. Mike Shildt had worn out many members of the Padres coaching and support staffs, as well as others around the organization. Both things are true at the same time, and that's what makes his decision to step away on Monday so complicated. Shildt said, "One of the reasons I'm going to leave is a frustration with the stress and inability to please everybody. I made a decision to go home because of this. I'm tired of dealing with it." And that's definitely something that can go on. Yeah, like you want to do things the way that you want to do it if you're the manager of the team. But in a Major League Baseball team, just think about how many staff members there are, how many members of the coaching staff. And you're the head guy. So you've got a lot of people coming to you with opinions and strategy, and you're always on during the season. Like you don't really have days off. And it can be a lot. I can only imagine like how much that can be. Um, so there were complaints, and it's anonymous quotes because they got to protect themselves here because some are still with the organization, and there are some things that it seems like they told Kevin anonymously that it would be obvious who it was if, and not maybe to us, but people that are in the building who was actually saying this stuff if they actually said these actual scenario situations that happened with Shildt. But Kevin says nearly 20 sources, 12 of them who worked with Shildt on a daily basis during the season, have in recent months characterized Shildt as unyieldingly demanding of his coaching staff and the team support staff, and as having a tendency to micromanage and possessing a quick temper that is easily triggered by questioning or feedback. So the 12 of the 20, I assume some of these are coaches, because if they work with Shildt on a daily basis, some of them are coaches. Some of them would be support staff who would work with Shildt on a daily basis. Unyieldingly demanding of his coaching staff and the team support staff. Micromanaging, the quick temper stuff, like micromanaging, I feel like that's going to creep in to managers around baseball. Because when you're the manager, you want to know what's happening everywhere. And you're going to check in everywhere. When you're a baseball rat and you want everything to be run, maybe not everything a certain way, but you have standards, you have high standards, and you want to make sure that things are being run the right way. And you care a lot about the organization and you want everything to be that perfect way so that it can lead to results. So the micromanaging, yeah, I can totally see how that is going to happen. And unyieldingly demanding, is that opinion based by these sources? Because if you are a baseball rat like AJ, like Shildt, and like all you think about is bettering the Padres and going and winning that game, and you don't really have a life outside of it, right? If you're like them, then maybe you didn't think that it was unyieldingly demanding. But if you're not like them, which I assume most of these human beings are not like to that level, then I could totally see how you would think that, yeah, it's unyieldingly demanding of how he went about things. Shildt had a nearly 2-hour conversation with Kevin Acee on Tuesday. Shildt repeatedly declared he is proud of his accomplishments and how he had conducted himself, and said more than once that he is walking away with my head held high. He was taken aback by the depth of some grievances about him and disputed that he acted inappropriately, though he did not deny he was aware of a certain level of discord he almost exclusively attributed to to some staff members not being on board and or not knowing what it takes to be a part of a championship effort. So it goes back to the high standards. Um, and like it's not for everyone. It's not for everyone. Um, I'm not going to read the whole thing because that's not fair to Kevin. I want you guys to go read this article, but there's stuff that obviously that stands out that I'm going to talk about here. Um, so Shildt sounds genuinely and overwhelmingly relieved by his decision to leave. Some in the Padres organization feel the same way. Let's see. It goes into talking about how there's eerily similar things that went on with the Cardinals and with the Padres and the ending there. Kevin, I think this was good when he brought up in 2022 a quote where Shildt reflected on what led to him being fired with the Cardinals. And Shildt said then, I do recognize I care too much. And so I held accountability to these departments that I didn't have the autonomy for. And that's what rubs people wrong. I know what togetherness looks like. I know what a respectful, accountable conversation looks like. The fact of the matter is nowadays, you can't have as many accountable conversations. He said he wouldn't push as hard if given another opportunity to manage. It's a fine line because every night is a thin margin competition, and I respectfully held people accountable. But it seems like he did do the same things that he was doing in St. Louis about and holding people accountable in departments that that they're run by other people. But he's also the manager of the team. So when you're put in that position, you probably feel like you can have a say in a lot of things because you're the manager of the team. Um, Shildt acknowledged Tuesday that the things he was hearing were eerily similar in the two places I've managed. The Cardinals thing was philosophical differences. That's what has only been said publicly. I'm reading here, some Cardinals coaches and others threatened to quit if Shildt remained. That did not occur in San Diego, Kevin writes, though multiple coaches indicated they would leave if they found opportunities elsewhere. Shildt, there was plenty, this is obviously negative. There was plenty of positivity, though, from players, from other people that work with Mike Shildt. He said that he received over 1,000 messages after this announcement was made. So I don't want to make this seem like it was, because I'm a Mike Shildt guy. I don't want to make this seem like this is all negative, but this is something that was written by Kevin. And Kevin obviously he was the one that broke it and got the letter from Shildt. And if you listen to Shilt's interactions with the media, you knew that he liked Kevin Acee. I think that's pretty obvious. Called him Ace. Didn't just call him Kevin. Um, he would call Dennis Dennis. I'm pretty sure. I don't think he had a nickname for Dennis Lynn. So for Kevin to be, and this is a credit to Kevin, for him to be writing this about and having this long conversation with Shildt about negative things that people are saying about Shildt and how he went about things, that's a little ballsy from Kevin. Like he wouldn't say that because it's like he's doing his job, but there are people that have opinions about Kevin. And I hope that those people really respect Kevin. I hope they respect him from the Manny Machado piece that he wrote in 2023 because that takes some guts. I hope they respect him for this, where he reveals some stuff in reporting that isn't so that doesn't look good for Mike Shildt. But yeah, multiple coaches indicated they would leave if they found opportunities elsewhere, which is a reflection of Shildt. Let's see. A couple staff members who acknowledged Shildt pushed extremely hard and that there was discouragement among a number of coaches also said they strongly believed Shilt's only goal was for his coaches to be the best that they could be. One coach who did not appreciate how Shildt treated him acknowledged he had become a better coach in large part due to Shilt's demands and feedback. So there you go. Like, and maybe other people can relate to this too. And maybe in their workplace. Obviously, I don't know what people listening or watching the show what they do, but maybe you've had a boss that you're not the biggest fan of, but you're like, well, I got to admit, like, yeah, I have gotten better because he has this person, he, she, this person has pushed me to be better. Let's see. Shildt says, I'm secure with who I am and how I've treated people. I'm not perfect. Yes, there have been hard conversations to hold people to a standard for their job security and their future and our obligation to the organization and the clubhouse and the community. Both my managerial tenures, I have had to have difficult conversations for the greater good of the organization, and I did it very well, and I did it respectfully, and we were successful. We won baseball games, and to win is ultimately my job. Um, Badge of honor that he has held like every role inside of a clubhouse, from clubhouse guy to other duties. So I could see, like, when you do have that background that Shildt does and over 30 years working in the game, like, I can totally understand how you walk in and your title is manager of the Padres, and you can think that you can have a say in everything that's going on and, be demanding of of everyone around. I can accept I had a high standard and I held people to a high standard for the betterment of the players and organization. That's my job. I am completely aware I challenge the staff. This one was one that stuck out. Shildt largely left governing of the clubhouse to players and made it a priority to exhibit patience and deference to them. He was, according to several people, often the opposite with his coaching staff and members of the support staff. Those people said that would sometimes happen within a matter of seconds as he berated a staff member before walking out into the clubhouse with a smile on his face. That doesn't sound like the best look. But if we kind of break this down here, let the players manage the players. That makes sense if you're the manager. If you want the players to buy into you, allowing them to manage themselves and you not walking in there and having all these team meetings all the time and all that, like, you have a better shot of having the players buy into you by trusting them to manage their space, right? Like, that's their space. And there are leaders on this team that are capable of managing that space, right? Joe Musgrove immediately comes to mind. There are people that can do that. So I'm fine with that. And then when it comes to being the opposite with the coaching staff and members of the support staff, he Shildt isn't a player. He's on the coaching staff. I know he leads the coaching staff. He's on the coaching staff too. So his side of things, if there's a player side and there's a staff side, he's on the staff side and he's the manager. So he's going to oversee that. And so, yeah, like, there's different conversations. You're not going to approach something with a player the same way you're going to approach something with a member of your staff that you have more conversations with, that you spend more time with, right? So maybe that is a little, I don't know if overblown is the right way to put it there. Um, Berating staff members, yeah, that's not something that I'm like, oh yeah, I'm glad that he did that. That's a great look. No, it's not. But I think being demanding of a coaching staff and holding people accountable, I think that's what you should be doing. Like, there's high standards here. There's a city that wants to go win a World Series, and in order to do that, like, yeah, be demanding, hold people accountable, have high standards. Because if you don't, then you're just gonna then it comes off as like you don't care enough, and then things could go in the wrong direction pretty quick if you don't hold people accountable. Because if something goes wrong with someone in the coaching staff or whatever jobs are going on, whatever roles they have, and no one says anything about it, they're just going to keep doing it that way. And it's going to keep pissing Mike Shildt off or whatever. So you got to say something. Um, let's see. The coaching staff's morale was routinely described as low. Three players were asked about the working relationship between Shildt and his coaches. Two acknowledged at least some knowledge of tensions, but said it had no effect on the team's performance. Um, there's obviously the talk about, and I'll get to this here in a second when Kevin is writing about it, the talk about how he would push back at members of the media, and he didn't approach that always the best way. Whenever he was questioned, he did not appreciate that. And if that's how he acted with people on the coaching staff, yeah, that's not great. Because the people on your coaching staff are supposed to help you, and they're trying to help, right? Like you bring them into he didn't bring everyone in, but you bring people into the organization, or you have conversations if they're in the organization already and you're like, yep, I trust you, let's do this. Then empower them, believe in them. And you can have disagreements, but to berate members of the coaching staff, to make them feel smaller than you, to make it known like, yeah, I'm the guy, you're not. If that's that's sad if that's what happened. But at the same time, like him having the high standard and him, like I can't totally fault him for like wanting his hands in everything because of the high standard that he has and how much he did care about trying to bring a winner to San Diego, you know? Um, let's see. As the Padres continue to win, those below and above Shildt were reluctant to push for his ouster or even complain too vociferously. However, it remained a persistent topic among many of them, even as they also sought to remain focused on their jobs. Some coaches also resigned themselves to simply surviving because there is not an abundance of major league opportunities. Multiple coaches said they wanted to win and felt the Padres afforded that chance and they wanted to be part of the realization of a goal. They also said their love for the Padres kept them around. That and that's a weird spot to be in as a coach, as a staff member, I would think. Like, you love the players, you love other people on the staff, you don't like how you're being treated by the head person, but what keeps you sticking around is the love that you have for everybody else, and that most of the time you're happy. You enjoy those interactions, and it's one heck of a job to have, to be able to get paid to go into Petco Park every day. Um, but like if you could fix something, it would be what's happening with the manager or how he interacts. Um, the Padres enlisted people internally to work with Shildt regarding his penchant to snap at colleagues and even superiors who he perceived were questioning him. The plan, according to multiple sources, the plan for the offseason was for there to be more discussions and work done regarding his interactions with staff and media. So, with the amount of time that he's been in the game, it really seems like he just was like, I've been in this longer than you. I've seen more than you. I'm the manager of this team. Why are you questioning what I'm saying? Which I can understand that viewpoint, but at the same time, with the stress that he was going through and the things that he was going through, maybe there were people with clearer heads that were suggesting things that maybe would have made more sense, and he could have been more open-minded with that, you know? People all over the organization regularly tuned in to watch Shilt's post-game news conferences. Their curiosity was so much about the manager's insight into the game as much as what happened when the manager was questioned. Shildt treated many queries as if they were personal attacks. Even innocuous questions could cause him to lash out, either acting as if the question had no basis or causing him to rail against perceived slights. What unfolded in the interview room would be viewed by those who worked for and with Shildt with head shaking and sometimes with gallous humor. Their dismay was not just that the organization's most forward facing employee, the only one required to speak publicly hundreds of times each season, came across as defensive and combative. It was, they said, a reflection of how Shildt often conducted himself behind the scenes. See, that's not great. Questioning members, like being pissed off with a question by the member of the media, I understand that. Media, while they have a job to do, if you're Mike Shildt, you have all the information because it's your job, it's your coaching staff's job to help present you all that information and you make the decisions. You have all of it. The media doesn't. They're not thinking about everything. They'll be thinking about some of the same things, but there's no way they have the same information that you're looking at, right? Or looking at every aspect of it going into a decision. And so I can understand why Shildt would be combative like that. To do it though, to act that way with people inside the organization, who are trying to help, that's where you can't be doing that. Many in the organization spoke over the past several months of repeated angry outbursts and what were painted as unproductive and destructive communication tactics. Shildt often made employees feel silly for suggestions or what they deemed helpful information, but he then would sometimes complain that they had not prepared him for situations. Some veteran coaches lamented that the coaches lower on the totem pole bore the brunt of Shilt's vexation. I really don't like that. That makes me feel weird because like I'm a Shildt guy. I was sad that he retired, and I'm sad hearing about the health stuff, and I really want him to be okay. And I really hope that he is going to be okay. And this decision to step away is going to take that stress off of him, and he's going to be living a happier life because of it. Reading this though um, makes me sad because there's no way that this is false. Like all of this information is false. I know some people hate Kevin, but I don't. I appreciate the work that he puts in and the amount of hours that he spends reporting this. Like he puts himself out there, and I have a lot of respect for him for that. And I just refuse to believe that these are all lies and oh, they're anonymous, so they don't have the balls to go out there and say it with their chest with their name on there. It's like they also have a job too that they need to protect. They need to protect themselves. Um, but yeah, seeing like made employees feel silly for suggestions, berating someone. That's not who it seemed like Mike Shildt was publicly. And with players, obviously, he'd have a smile on his face and he'd totally change, according to this. Um, so that's frustrating just to read. It's sad. It's yeah. To read this, yeah, it sucks. Because that's not how those coaches like. I know he was the manager and he's in that main seat, has power and all that, and rightfully so. He can think that he knows a ton because he does with the background he has in baseball. But those other coaches do too. Victor Rodriguez, and he was not named in this about like venting about Mike Shildt, but I'm just saying the guy's over 60 years old. How much experience does he have in the game of baseball? How much experience does Tim Leeper have in the game of baseball? How much experience does Ruben Niebla have? And I'm not saying these were the ones that Shildt yelled at or berated, but I'm just bringing that up. How many years in the minor leagues do some of these coaches have? Even if it's not a lot, all of these coaches are human beings. They all have a journey. They could have also been going through things, and I'm sure they were stressed out during this season if they were treated a certain way. And so I hope that Shildt like looks back on that and you know during this time of reflection and now he's not in the seat, he can go back and apologize to some of these people because they don't deserve to be treated that way. They're on the coaching staff trying to help. And if Shildt takes it personally as like them questioning Mike Shildt's ability to manage or how much he knows about the game of baseball, if it came off as those coaches know more than Shildt does and they're trying to tell Shildt that, yeah, I hope he apologizes to these people because that's not fair to them. Um, Others spoke of Shildt believing he had communicated to a coach what he wanted out of a drill or a player. Sometimes they said it was not communicated in a way that was clear, yet Shildt would berate the coach when something was not done the way he thought it should have been. Multiple witnesses to these tirades independently offered virtually identical accounts. Details of certain instances are being withheld to protect the anonymity of those involved, including some who did not speak for this article. But it was not just those below him that were subject to Schilt's indignation. On more than one occasion, according to multiple sources, Preller would tell a colleague he was going in to talk to Shildt about a topic and then joke that he would be prepared to duck. If the person above you is going in joking that you're not going to have a good reaction and that you're going to flip out at that person, like that's not a great look. That's not a great look. And above when I was talking about a coach, something not being communicated in a way that was clear, and they were supposed to go teach this to a player in a drill, and then Shildt would berate the coach when something wasn't done the way he thought it should have been. I hope that coach went back to Shildt and was like, "Can you next time please explain this better?" Because if they didn't do that, then Schilt's going to be like, "Well, yeah, I'm going to keep getting pissed off because you're not saying anything. So I assume that you understand what I'm telling you to go tell these players in drills and how to execute it. You're not telling me that I'm not being thorough or describing it well enough. So how am I supposed to know, right?" So there does need to be that communication on both sides. Um, there were, according to several people, tensions between Preller and Shildt. Shildt told some people he did not feel supported by the front office in some ways. Others characterized that as untrue and said Shildt often appeared to want it both ways, to have the front office involved in certain situations and to not interfere in many other instances. Publicly, obviously, these two guys have said the relationship's good. They get along, had lunch yesterday, blah, blah, blah. Tension between the two, I don't even think that's a big deal. I'm sure there's tension between every manager and GM at some point because it's just going to happen. They're going to disagree. It's just going to happen. And I understand Shildt too, like wanting it both ways. I know the front office could be, you know, I don't know what the right word, like confused why Shildt would want it both ways. But if I'm trying to look at it from Schilt's view, I'm like, I want your input on relievers when they can come into a game against different lanes. What do you think I should do with not lineup decisions, but who should I be playing in these certain spots against these pitchers? Where should these guys be playing in the field? Information that maybe Shildt doesn't have the time to be sifting over, but the front office can give him that information. But at the end of the day, like he's the manager, so he's going to want, once he gets the information, he's going to want to make the decision by himself, for himself, like because it's his job. He's the manager. So I do understand that, to have them involved, but to not interfere in many other instances. I totally can understand that. Shildt often seemed bothered by what was written and talked about in the media and on social media. He even acknowledged that he internalized many comments and compliments from fans as a further imperative to win a World Series, received death threats late in the season, routinely brought up to people in the org and to media members about how people outside the organization perceived him and the job he was doing. So I think it's hard, but that is one of the mistakes that managers would make is caring about what people outside say because it doesn't matter. Like you got to go with what you think is best. And you can care about what people inside the organization think because they're in there with you. They're in that clubhouse. They're in those meetings. But to to care about what members of the media are going to write about you, you can't control that. You can't control how they think. You can't control the words that they're going to put in that laptop. So why are you spending time on it? They're going to write their stories. It is what it is. And this goes with players too. Looking at what fans think on social media. Why? Is that because that's the natural thing to do? You should not care. You can look at the positive things and appreciate that, but for people that are going to be negative to you, you're just wasting your time, and there's no reason to be caring about what they think. I mean, I get it here with this show. Like early on, when I'd get negativity, yeah, I would be reading through it, and guess what? I'd be wasting my time with that. Now, I I'm mature enough to laugh at it and be like, all right, cool. I'm gonna keep saying what I believe. I'm gonna keep doing this how I am gonna do it, and I don't care. Like if you don't like me, you don't like me anyway. So whatever. And then the people that support me, I'm very grateful for that, and I'm appreciative of that, and I try to make that known, every show. And like this wouldn't be what it is without those viewers, those listeners, obviously. But like I'm gonna do the show how I want to do the show. I'm gonna operate my social media how I want to operate it. And if you think that, because haters would think that, oh, I'm embarrassing the Padres fan base and all that stuff. Like I don't care what they have to say. Like I'm just gonna keep being me. If you don't know me, you don't know me, and so you're gonna have your thoughts. I can't control your thoughts. And so getting it back to Shildt, like I think that's what he probably should have done instead of being bothered about what was written and talked about in the media and on social media when you can't control that. You could be the best manager of all time, and there's someone out there that's going to be negative, and they're going to point out one bad decision you made that cost a game, right? There's going to be people that are always calling for your job. Who cares? They're not the one, they're not making the decision, right? That probably would have put less stress on him, and maybe it would have helped him. Shildt spoke over the past 3 days of a routine that for 220 days a year, from the start of spring training through the final out, involved him waking up, working, and going to bed. He fretted about virtually every detail of his job and other people's jobs. He felt compelled to pick up the slack for any staff member he believed was incapable. I'm sure people feel that in their jobs. Like you care so much about it, you have the high standard that you're not just going to let things fall through. Like if something isn't being done, you're going to do it, even if it takes more, and even if it's picking up the slack. Some like you're going to do it because you care so much about it, and that's what Mike Shildt was. He cared so much about it, and if he cared too much, is that the worst thing in the world that he cared too much? I'd rather have someone care too much than care not enough. You know, I think we could say that Bob Melvin didn't care enough, and I wasn't in the building, but 2023, I think we could say he didn't care enough. Mike Shildt is the other way, cared too much, and the whole situation, it's sad. Here's the end of this article here. Shildt saying, I acknowledge and won't apologize for having high standards. I own that. I had to have hard conversations with players and staff. And of 80 people in a clubhouse, a high percentage of those I was able to partner with and work toward a common goal. And clearly that was effective, as reflected by our record on the field. There are going to be people who are going to push back and you're not going to please. And after trying to partner with people, I had to hold people accountable. I understand people don't like that. That standard is very high for me. And I take it very seriously to the point of burnout. Yeah, and that's that. And he says here, 80 people in a clubhouse, a high percentage of those he was able to partner. So like he's admitting that some of them, yeah, just wasn't wasn't there. And was it because those staff members didn't have that same hunger to win? And they're just good at their jobs and it's in San Diego and so that's that? I don't know. We don't know. There's a lot of people in that clubhouse that have a family. Mike Shilt's not married. AJ Preller's not married. So yeah, I don't think that they have any. Preller doesn't have a relationship. I don't know about Shildt. I don't think he has a relationship. I don't know because I thought he was with someone, but I don't think he is. I thought I saw Kevin Wright that he's not in a relationship. Um, they can put their attention solely on their job. Some people like there's a life outside of it, and you can't relate to that if you're not in that same situation. So after trying to partner with people, meaning like he tried, but it just wasn't going the way he wanted, then he had to hold people accountable and maybe look like the bad guy. But like you come off as the bad guy, but what you're just trying to do is do your best to put your team in a spot to go win a World Series. Like ultimately, that's what it came down to with Mike Shildt. I don't think it came down to, oh, Mike Shildt's a bad human being, because that's not the truth. I don't think that's the truth. I think he had his mind set on winning, and he was going to do whatever it takes to win. And if that meant irritating some members of the staff, then that was that. I think of Michael Jordan in the Last Dance doc about how there were things said about him and his leadership style, and how I'm not quoting him, but what I think I remember is like aggressive and how he would hold teammates to that high standard, and sometimes would go over the line. But he's like, and I'm not quoting him, but I wanted to win. And essentially, people that were critical of him, like, you haven't won anything. And he just wanted to push everyone around him to win because that's what he cared about, was winning. And there's a price to winning. And he was willing to pay that price with, some relationships. And it seems like Mike Shildt was willing to do that same thing. And so the whole thing sucks. The way that he treated some people, I don't think that's acceptable. I think obviously his whole health situation, like, that's really sad. It's really sad that they couldn't go win a World Series with Mike Shildt, because I really thought, like, coming off of Peter Seidler's passing, this was the guy to lead the organization. Like, he really wanted to win for San Diego, and it's pretty clear. He really wanted to win for San Diego, for Peter, and like the relationship he had with Peter and the conversations there, like, really good human being, you know? And so just for this whole situation to unfold this way, where the Padres now they're looking for another manager. You got this out here now in public, and Shildt, hopefully he's, on track to be better health wise. But yeah, the Padres, they never stop. It seems like there's always something. I mean, we went, what, a couple weeks with just wondering what was next for the Padres, and then this pops up. Like, there's not a lot of time where they're boring. There's not a lot of time where there's what's going on with the Padres. I don't know. Hasn't been any announcement. Hasn't been anything, and then this pops up. So, yeah, I know I went. That was like a full breakdown of this article. If you have thoughts on this, you can let me know in the comments on YouTube, on social media at Talking Friars. I do want to shout out the great partners of this show. Gagler and Bros Famous Cheesesteaks and Garlic Fries. Their main location is on Friars Road. The link to their website is in the description. Great cheesesteaks, garlic fries, cheesesteak fries. They're at Petco Park. They're inside Snapdragon Stadium. SDFC will be hosting playoff game there, at least one. Um, and then San Diego Wave, they've got their final home game of the regular season coming up on Saturday, a hockey shirt giveaway. So I definitely recommend you go check out this team because they're a fun team to watch. Great win against Utah from this past weekend. Shout out to Breaking Tea, Padres and Aztecs shirts and sweatshirts. Click the link in the description for them. And then SeatGeek, code Talking Friars, $20 off your first order when you sign up with your email address. It's not just Padres games, there's other concerts, events that you can use this on. So I appreciate anyone that does that. And I'm trying to help you out there with that code. But that's what I've got today. Thank you all for the time. Much appreciated. Credit to Kevin AC, credit to Shildt for talking, credit to the coaches for being brave to talk, credit to Kevin AC for being brave to do this reporting. And I hope that people respect Kevin for doing this, coming off of this, and we'll see what's next. AJ Preller, he talked yesterday. I already gave my thoughts yesterday, late last night on that, so you can check that out if you missed it. But he's going to be, he already has a list, I assume. And then I assume that interviews will be lined up here. And I don't know if an extension is going to be announced before, so potential managers know, all right, Preller's going to be here, and it's not just a 1-year thing, or will they wait to line up the contracts and then they kind of announce them at the same time? We shall see.